Hey, my name is Izzy. This is Rolling Virtual Cards coming at you with another Magic the Gathering deck build with Year of Atraxa, or Month of Atraxa, or several months of Atraxa, or 2 months of Atraxa, however you want to phrase it. I started back in February, couldn't continue. Let's finish this up though. Bunch of decks still to go. 28 of them. Atraxa, Keruga. So, for those who don't know, Keruga is a companion. The way companions work is they have a deck restriction, and you build your deck around it. So Keruga, the Myco Sage, requires that your starting deck contains only cards with mana value 3 or greater and lands. Its effect is whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other permanent you control with mana value 3 or greater. So we're going to hit that up. We're going to show you the deck and let you know how it works. Atraxa Praetor's Voice, to go over it quickly like I do in every single video here, is green, white, blue, black for a 4/4 Angel Horror with Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink at the beginning of instant Proliferate. Proliferating is when you select any number of players and or permanents with counters on them and give them another of each counter that's on them. Now, Atraxa has Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink, which means it's great at hitting people, great at protecting you, great at killing other creatures, and great at gaining you life accidentally. So, why is it good in this deck? I don't know. Atraxa is interesting, and giving it this limitation of Keruga is fun. You're still running stuff that works with Atraxa, all the proliferating you want to do with it, but Keruga just gives you that limitation, with the upside of you can get Keruga into your hand for 3 mana, you can add it from your companion spot to your hand, and then you can cast it for 5 to have a nice draw later on in the game. So, let's get into card by card. First off, +1/+1 counters. Why? Because it's Atraxa. Branching Evolution is 2 and a green with enchantment. If 1 or more 1/1 counters be put on a creature you control, twice that many 1/1 counters are put on instead. So if you would put 2 on it, you get 4. Champion of Lambholt has creatures with less power than it can't block creatures you control, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on. So you cast it, cast another creature, now it has a 1/1 counter, so it's 2/2, and then Atraxa makes it to 3/3, so then like next turn, you cast another creature at 4/4, now creatures with power 4 or less can't block any of your creatures. You need to get in with all your creatures. Chasm Skulker is such a good card in Atraxa, so it really prevents your opponents from wanting to board wipe, because once this guy gets to like 5 counters, oh cool, you board wipe, I get 5 1/1s with Island Walk. Like, I'm gonna still get something, really makes board wiping feel worse. Drana Liberator Malakir is 1 and 2 black for 2/3 Vampire Ally with Flying First Strike. When it deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on each attacking creature you control. So, the cool thing about this is since it has First Strike, it hits them, you all get the 1/1 counters, and then your guys hit them. So, very useful. It does put the 1/1 counter on it. All of them will get more 1/1 counters due to your commander, or with something like Branching Evolution, or Kami the Whispered Hopes. So, very useful. Heliod Suncrown is 2 and a white for 5/5 indestructible. As long as you have less than 5 devotion, it's not a creature. If you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control for 1 and a white. Another target creature gains lifelink until their turn. Your commander is lifelink, so every time it hits, you're going to be able to put a 1/1 counter on something. Being able to have that mana sink of just that thing gets lifelink, that thing gets lifelink, allows you to accidentally gain a lot more life. Cannot target itself, by the way, because it has another target creature. But good ways to do that. Kami of the Whispered Hopes. If you would get 1 or more counters, 1/1 counters, you get an additional one. So if you get 2, you get 3. And then it gets this nice little bump of sorry, muting my phone there. It gets a nice bump of it taps for X mana or X its power. So if you can keep getting it 1/1 counters, it gets more. Mana Gorgia Hydra is 2 and a green for a 1/1, and it has trample, and then whenever a player casts a spell, it gets 1/1 counter on it. So it can get really big really fast. Rishkar Pema Renegade, it ensures you put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So like, choose 2 creatures, they both get a 1/1 counter, and then creatures with counters on it can tap for a green. Good ramp. Ooh, that was a flicker. Sorry about that, guys. Should still be going. Yeah, we're good. Sword of Truth and Justice is a great card in any Atraxa deck. 3 generic for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and protection from white and blue, protecting your Atraxa, making it a 6/6. And when a creature deals combat damage to the player, you put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control and proliferate. That proliferate's going to make all your creatures bigger. And that 1/1 counter is really good to just start off that roll. Put it on your Atraxa, and then out of her proliferation, she'll get bigger and bigger. Unbreakable Formation's cool because it's 2 and a white. Creatures you control gain indestructible in turn, and if you cast it on your main phase, you put a 1/1 counter on each of them, and they gain vigilance. So it's both protection in the form of, hey, you're gonna board wipe, my stuff stays, but it also goes, hey, look at all my stuff. I'm gonna give them all 1/1 counters, which with the right setup could be 2 1/1 counters, and vigilance, so they can attack this turn. And they still get indestructible, so they're not gonna worry about the night. Felidar Retreat is 3 and a white for enchantment. When it lands into the battlefield, you either get a 2/2 cat beast or put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and they gain vigilance. So that 1/1 counter is great once you have a field set up, but if someone board wipes but you have Felidar Retreat on the field and they didn't destroy the enchantments, it's a great way to rebuild. Keep getting your 2/2 cats each turn. Forgotten Ancient gets a 1/1 counter whenever a player casts a spell, but then at your upkeep you can move any number of 1/1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. So, like, if it's got 5 1/1 counters, you can move 1/1 counter onto each creature, which is great, because if you're getting an additional one each time, all of a sudden you're putting 2 1/1 counters on them. And if you're doubling it, you could put 2 1/1 counters on a few creatures and get even more. Shalai, Voice of Plenty is 3 and a white for a 3/4 angel with flying, and planeswalkers you control and other creatures you control have hexproof, making it, hey, you had to pop Shalai to be able to pop other things. But then 4 and 2 green, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, which is another just great way to just mono sync and buff your creatures. And Gathar's Crusade's a card that I personally hate, and I hate it because it makes everything just more complicated. But 3 and a white, or 3 and 2 white for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So when you play a creature, all your creatures get an additional 1/1 counter. And then you play a second creature and all of them get 1/1 counters, including the new one. And then you do it again. But when you have tokens involved and everything else, it gets like a lot of like, hey, keep track of everything. So make sure you have your dice. Is all I can say to that. How much is he going for? Oh, 16. Hasn't been reprinted in a while. Spark Double. Okay. Spark Double, you might see in a few of my Atraxa decks. A Spark Double is so good when your commander either has an activated ability or a triggered ability. Spark Double hits the field as a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control, except it comes with an additional 1/1 counter or a loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker, and it isn't legendary. What that means is Spark Double can come in as a copy of Atraxa with a 1/1 counter on it, making it a 5/5. Atraxa proliferates those, and you're getting 2 proliferate triggers at the end of the step. Honestly, whatever deck you're running, Spark Double is probably worth running in the Atraxa deck. Honestly, any clone card that's non-legendary should probably be ran in an Atraxa deck because it's pretty good. The only downside to some of them is you can't always get Atraxa if it's dead. But the upside is like, yeah, that's what's so good about it, but like you could put it on Shalai and oh look, now no one could target any of my stuff. Or a second Forgotten Ancient. Or another Mana Gorger, or Drana to give even more stuff. It does a lot. Oh, another Kami. There's a lot that Spark Double does that you can look into as to why it's just such a good card. ETBs, we'll go over the ones we haven't gone over. Again, ETBs are its own category because it's such a good thing to have. Just being able to get something off of them as soon as they hit the field means even if they got removed, it doesn't matter. Eternal Witness, so good. Just grab a card from your grave and put it in your hand. Such a useful way to just get something. And yes, it's a 2/1, but it's going to get bigger over time. Tireless Provisioner. A land hits the field, you get a food or a treasure. That food almost never gets chosen. It's almost always treasure for that extra ramp, but food tokens aren't bad if you're running out of life. Guardian Project. When a creature enters the battlefield, a non-token creature in the battlefield, you draw a card. As long as you don't have another creature in your graveyard with the same name. So, as long as you're not playing that you can have as many of this card in your deck, you're fine. Solemn Simulacrum is in this deck. Not in a lot of the other decks. Why? Because it's power. It needs to be CMC 3 more. So, but Solemn is a perfectly fine card. It hits the field. You get to go and go, hey, let me go grab a basic, put it on the field. And then when it dies, you draw a card. Solemn's even better in decks that can abuse it. But in this deck, you can at least get 1 counters on it and start getting it bigger. Sword Climber is 3 and a white. For 3/3, when it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for a plains card and reveal it. If an opponent, any of them, just one of them, has more lands than you, put it on the battlefield tab. Otherwise, You may put it in your hand, then shuffle your library, and then you can foretell it for 1 in a green, for 1 in a, or for 2, and then cast it for 1 in a white. What you're gonna notice in this deck coming up here is a lot of foretell and a lot of suspend, because you can do those before turn 3. Everything here is 3 or more mana, so normally you can't do anything for 2 turns. Nothing until that 3rd turn. But with something like Stoic Farmer, you can cast it turn 2. Well, not cast it, but you can exile it turn 2, which really gives you that nice little push that you need to be able to do stuff. That type of stuff is what really makes these decks viable. Okay, so with Stoic Farmer, great ramp, and if you just go for 2, then on turn 3, foretell it out, because they, as long as you didn't go first, mind you, they'll have 3 lands. Oh, I could play my 3rd land, but I'm going to Stoic Farmer, grab my land planes. Oh, I have less lands, play, and then play your land for turn. So, very good there. ETB enablers. What does this mean? An enabler means it triggers ETB. So, Cosmic Intervention. If a permanent you control would be put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn, exile it instead, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next step. So, again, you can foretell this for 2, and then on your opponent's turn, if they go to board wipe and this card, mind your way, you foretell face down, so they don't know what it is. But if they go to board wipe, you can Cosmic Intervention. Oh, look, they get exiled, they come all back. So you get all the ETBs in. And Spark Double is an ETB enabler because if the guide's copying has an ETB, it gets that. Glorious Protection has foretell for 2 and a white. But Flash Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may exile any number of non-angel creatures you control until Glorious Protection leaves the field. Again, very good. Turn 2, foretell. Then it's sitting there, and then at any point, as long as you have 2 and a white, if someone goes, I'm going to destroy the field, you can go Glorious Protection, exile all of them. Oh, Glorious Protection died, bring them all back. Finishers. Champion of Lampart is a finisher because it just goes, hey, you can't block my stuff, you die. Beastmaster Ascension is a finisher because as long as you have 7 or more counters on it, all your creatures get +5/+5, which is enough to usually win the game. Ramp. Let's go over the ramp in a deck that has to be 3 or more. Burnish Heart comes in the field as a 2/2. You can pay 3 to sack it and go get 2 basic lands, put them in the battlefield. Tapped. For 6, basically, you get to do something. Or 3 separated twice. Chromatic Lantern. This is 3 for a that can tap for any color and then makes your lands tap for any color. Command Sphere, you can tap it for any color and you can sack it, draw cards. That means you can tap it for a color, sack it, draw a card, and then still use that one. Cultivate and Kodama's Reach does the same thing. Search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them out of tap, and 1 in your hand. Ooh. Harrow. Harrow's great. Harrow, you sacrifice a land, and then you can search the library for 2 basic lands and put it on the battlefield, and put them onto the battlefield. Untapped. Very useful there. And what's cool with this is, on turn 3, if you have like a foretell, you can Harrow, sack one of the 3 lands that you did, get 2 untapped, and you can tap the 2 to foretell. Kami, we talked about that. A Rift Soul is another one of those awesome cards. This is a suspend. You play it turn 1 for suspend. Turn 2, it removes a counter. Turn 3, remove a counter, hits the field, and now it can be tapped for any color. So you're setting up for a turn 3 a turn 4 where you have an extra mana. Rishkar, Pima Renegade, we went over. Search for Tomorrow, such a good card. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield and shuffle. This is a turn 3 play, but you can spend it for 1. So on turn 3, you get a basic land card, and you put it onto the battlefield untapped. So on turn 3, you will be on turn 4, as long as you have that 3rd land drop already. We went over Tireless. Smothering Tithe, such a good card. Very expensive. Proxy if it's too expensive for you. Again, it's a $35 card, so I'd proxy if I were you guys. I don't like spending that much money. I can trade for it, and if I had extra money, maybe. If it's in a deck I really like playing, I slowly unproxy them. If the card's not $100+. 3 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 generic. If a player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact. So you get a treasure. We went over Solemn, we went over Stoic. Venture Forth. 3 and a green for sorcery. Exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a land card. Put that card on the battlefield and the rest of the bottom of the library in a random order. Exile Venture Forth 3 time counters. So you can suspend this on turn 2 with 3 time counters. So then turn 3, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, you get a basic land. And then you exile it again. So then by turn 8, you get another one. Now, it's very slow, but over time, you're going to notice that this actually does a lot in games because, you know, like, Magic doesn't slow. Magic doesn't fast casually. You're not playing this deck competitively, right? You're just nicely having a fun game, and so this card's going to come back out. You're going to get a nice advantage off of it. Sage of the Beyond, flying, spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast, and then you have foretell for 4 and blue. So what's cool about this is all your foretell cards are going to cost 2 less, making it a little better. Zendikar Resurgence is 5 and 2 green for an enchantment. Whenever you tap a land, you add an additional, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. Great draw cards, and a great way to finally be able to cast all your big spells fast. 3 recursions. You have the Eternal Witness, like we talked about. Return upon the tide. 4 and a black. Return target creature card from your grave into the battlefield. If it's an elf, create 2 elves, and you can foretell. So there are some elves. You can return them to get some elf tokens, but being able to foretell this card is great. Haunting Voyage is 4 and 2 black. Choose a creature type. Return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your grave into the battlefield. If this spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from your grave into the battlefield. 5 and 2 black for the foretell. Yeah, you do tend to be able to at least get, a certain amount of something that's the same in the deck. So not the best, but not bad. I don't care about the lands. Next. We went over those guys. Counters. Lae'zel, Vlaakith's champion. You just get an additional counter. And doubling seasons, double counters or double tokens. Both very useful. Damage, we talked about this guy. Here's the 2 other ones. Gix, Yawgmoth, and Intimidate, and the Indomitable. Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor is 1 and 2 black for 3/3 Phyrexian Praetor. So whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay a life and draw a card. 4 and 3 black, discard X cards, exile the top X cards of target player in its library. You may play lands and cast spells from among those cards exiled without paying their mana costs. And that's just forever. Not till the turn. So you can just keep playing their lands, keep casting their spells. Very useful. Very fun card. It does help your opponents, but it also makes them attack your other opponents, which is useful. And lose life slowly. And the Indomitable, you draw a card whenever the creature you control deals damage, but it's also a 6/6 vehicle with trample that can be crewed. And you may cast it from your graveyard as long as you control 3 or more pirates or vehicles. That's never going to happen, but yeah. Draw. We go over the draw. We went over, okay, Life Crafters. Oh, no. Give me a second. I gotta pause. There we go. A few more. Bident, Reconnaissance, Coastal Piracy, Toski, and Orin all did the same thing as Indomitable, where when you deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Bident can be paid, you can pay 1 and a blue to tap it to make all your creatures' opponents attack, which gives you a nice evasion to be able to get in there and damage them. Reconnaissance can be cycled for 2. Coastal Piracy has no additional. Toski is a creature that can't be countered and has indestructible and must attack. And Orin Frostring gives all attacking creatures death touch. So other draw cards, Lifecraft Bestiary, scries at the beginning of your upkeep, and if you cast a creature spell, you may pay a green if you do draw a card. Beast Whisperer grabs draw a card if you cast a creature. Behold the Multiverse is scry 2, then draw 2, and you can foretell it for 1 and a green, blue. Guardian Project draws you a card whenever a creature enters the battlefield. Tales from the Ancestries. Each player with fewer cards in hand than the player with the most cards in hands draws cards equal to the difference. So if one of your opponents has 6 cards or 7 cards and you have 3, cool, draw 3 to 4 cards. But you also help your opponents. And this has got foretell for 1 and a blue. Battle Mammoth is 3 and 2 green for 6/5 with trample, foretell for 2 and a green. For 2 and 2 green. And whenever a permanent you control begins with a target spell an opponent controls, you may draw a card. So if they do a target Battle Mammoth, you do get to draw that additional card, which is very useful. But also, if they target anything else, you get to draw a card. So, and we win it into card. Evasion. Evasion's so good. Having the flying is so useful. Ranar, the Ever Watchful. Flying, Vigilance. The first card you foretell each turn costs 0 to foretell. And then whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, you get a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Since you're foretelling, you usually get that like effect, which is pretty good. Vengeful Reaper is 3 and a blue, 3 and a black for a 2/3 with flying, death touch, and haste. But it also has foretell, which is just good. It's like a baby Atraxa almost. And then Star Whale is such a cool card. I love the art. 6 and 2 blue for an 8/8 alien whale with flying and vigilance. Other creatures you control have Ward 2 and suspend 6 and 1 in the blue. So just suspend this on turn 2, and then like by turn 8, you have like protection on all the stuff you have out in the field and like this big 8/8. It doesn't have Ward itself, by the way. Interaction: Beast Within and Generous Gift both blow something up and give them a 3/3. Any permanent, by the way. Poison Cap, destroy target creature. If this spell was foretold, scry 2, and you're going to foretell it for 2, usually. Raven Form, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller gets a 1/1 bird with flying, but you can foretell it for a white, for a blue. Saw It Coming can counter a spell, but you can foretell it for 1 in a blue. Toxic Deluge can, so as an additional cost to cast the spell, you pay X life, and then all creature gets -X/-X. So for 2 and a black, you can pay like 5 life and usually wipe the board. Vengeful Whipper, we went over its interaction because it's death touch, and like if someone blocks, they die. Rifting Cloud Skate is 3 and 2 blue for a 2/2 fly illusion with flying, and if it enters the battlefield, return target creature to its owner's hand. And it's got suspend for 3 for 1 in a blue. And Spectral Deluge is 4 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. Foretell for 2 in a blue. This usually is like 2 or 3. Mana cheats. Foretell is cheating mana, so it's all useful. Mana Sink. Protection. The extra protection. There's no extra protection. We already went over all this. Scry. Gix we went over. It's a Snatch. There's your stacks. All these, you got tokens. A few extra tokens here. Rise from the Dead, 2 and a black. Instant. Create X 2/2 black zombie berserk creature tokens for X of the number of non-token creatures that die this turn. You can foretell it for a black, which is cool. You just do that. Someone bored wipes, you go like, oh look, I get like, if everyone has like 3 creatures, I get 12 creatures. Nice. 12 2/2s. Starnaham Unleashed is 2 and 2 blue, 2 and 2 white for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 white angel warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. If this spell was foretold, create X of those tokens. So for like if you pay 7, you'd get 3 of them. And we went over the others, and we got the one tribal. We got the wipes, Toxic, Doom Scar, destroy all creatures for 5, or you can foretell it for 1 and 2 white. And we talked about Spectral Dooms, and then your sideboard, which is your Keruga. If you want to play this deck, the reason why is just because you really like this guy. He's going to give you good draw. He's a fun hippo dinosaur. Like, there's a lot going on in the deck. It's an interesting build because you do get to do stuff turn 2, which is usually foretelling something or suspending something. But overall, I think it's a fun build for Atraxa. An interesting build for Atraxa. One where your end goal is really just to play a different game than you might used to. Atraxa really gives you the help with the 1/1 counters, can really help you beat the crap out of your opponents, and Keruga can really come down turn like 5, because like turn 3, if you've got nothing to do, you can always add Keruga. Turn 4, you can always play Atraxa, and turn 5, you can always cast Keruga and draw a card for each other permanent you control with 3 or more, with mana value 3 or greater, so you can at least draw 1 card. Funny enough. But with that being said, like, a lot of times you'll get it back to your hand later on and just pay, like, 3 and then 5, so 8 to cast it and draw, like, 10 cards. So, not bad. Interesting deck. I definitely suggest checking it out if you wanted a Keruga deck. Atraxa is a great way to go. With that being said, let me know what you think of the deck down below. Tell me your favorite card on the deck. And let me know what you would use if you were going to make a Keruga deck. As your companion, mind you, not as the commander. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.